thank you for tuning in to the replay. If you have any questions for me, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at CreativLEI. So, of course, I have like 53 other things that I should be doing right now. But what am I doing? I'm hopping on Periscope because last night was the Mommy Scopes Mom Hop. For those of you that might not have ever seen my scope before, my name is Lisa. I blog at CreativLEI.com. And last night, Amy Polka Dot's Wishes of Mommy Scopes hosted the weekly Mom Hop. And the theme was the proposal. And I thought, I think I've told my story before, so, yeah, I do need to pack. I was like, I think I've told my story before, so I probably won't do it. And, oh, Michelle, it's funny that you mentioned that because one of the houses we are looking at, has a finished attic. And the first thing I thought when I walked through there was like, oh, I could have a studio space like Michelle's. I totally thought that. But I will tell you, it's our second choice home. It's not our first choice home. But either way, we would win. So I watched Tina's proposal story today, and I got excited about that. I was like, you know what? Maybe I will get on and tell my story. All the sordid details. Because I related a lot to what Tina, Zoo Cutie Prince, was saying. So let's see. I know studio space would be awesome. Oh, I'm at work with you. Yeah, I won't say anything that's highly inappropriate. It's just that my children don't know our full story, and they are not quite old enough to get the full story yet, if you know what I mean. So I will take you back. So it's like Throwback Thursday. Awesome. Yeah, I should probably use headphones too sometimes. Okay. So my husband and I met, and I have a little scrapbook in front of me. I'm not going to show you all the pages because they're not done yet. It's typical paper crafting fashion for me. It's not done yet. Hi, Eileen. We actually met on Halloween night, and I'll show you what we looked like because we were both dressed up. At the time, I was stationed aboard a ship in Norfolk, Virginia, and he was living in Chesapeake, Virginia. He was a student at Old Dominion University. Oh, good. And so Halloween night, the downtown strip mall type thing had a Halloween bar crawl with costume contests, and a bunch of people from my ship were going, and I went with them, and he was there as well. Do you need something?
No.
Okay, can you go upstairs for a little bit?
Yeah.
Thank you. Just ushering the little ones back upstairs. Okay, so I went with my buddies from the ship, not with anyone in particular, and while I was I dance. I love to dance. So while I was dancing, I kept seeing this one group, like at all the different places that I was at. And, it was the same person, and I'll show you his costume and why I knew I was looking at the same person all night. So that is what my husband looked like the night that I met him. Him and his roommates were dressed up as Thing 1 and Thing 2 and the Cat in the Hat. And this was me. I just had my face painted, nothing special. So everywhere I went that night, I kept bumping into these guys, and, well, it was two guys and a girl in the Cat in the Hat costume, and I didn't know why. We didn't chat at all. We just kept, bumping into each other every place that we were at. Well, it wasn't until like the last few minutes as I was getting ready to go out to the car to ride home with who I came with, that we stopped and talked. And we talked for a little while, and we exchanged numbers. And I am not usually the type to do that, and put his number right into my cell phone, which was weird. But the next day he called, and the next day was our first date, and I just remember waiting for him to show up because, the night that I met him, he had a wig on and his face was painted, and I really didn't know what I was getting into. But we met, and that was kind of like the start of it all. Halloween night, which is kind of ties into why Halloween is a mixed bag for us. We certainly don't ignore it because it's part of our history as a couple. So it's that. So that's how we met. That was October 31st of 2000. And I was stationed aboard a ship, and at the time, because of my rank, I actually lived on the ship. I was in E4. I had tested to E5, and later on I made that, but at the time I didn't receive a housing allowance. So I lived on the ship. Whether the ship was in port or out, Lisa was there. It was not good. So when we started dating, he had a house in Chesapeake, Virginia, and so I started staying there an awful lot. Like we were seeing each other almost daily, and so really kind of stayed there a lot. Oh, in a ship in Norfolk? Yeah, that's where we were. So things kind of progressed really, really fast. And then that December, I believe it was either December or January. It might have been January. He took me away on a weekend in Charlottesville, Virginia. And we say that was really the weekend that we knew that this was something more than just dating, that there was a future between the two of us. It wasn't anything crazy enlightening, but just we recognized the fact that this was for the long haul. So it was awesome. Well, in March of that following year, so March of 2001, I was somewhat surprised to find out that I was pregnant. And that was unexpected. We were not married. We were not engaged. I was still stationed on the ship. And I am the oldest of 7 children in a kind of old school Italian Irish Catholic family. That news went over like a lead balloon. We were lovingly supported, but it certainly disappointed everyone that, that we would kind of step out like that in a way that no one was really prepared for that, including myself. But there was a hitch. Like, of course, like Tina was saying, the first thing that most people would say was, oh, when are you getting married? Well, we couldn't get married because at the time, my husband was in the process of being divorced from his first wife. They had been separated for over a year, but their divorce was not finalized when we met. So it kind of was like a very rocky point of the relationship. Of course, my father was appalled that I would be in such a situation where we kind of were stuck. We couldn't really move forward because legally we couldn't move forward. But just that we would have been irresponsible in that way to back us into a corner that we couldn't solve that. But everyone kind of supported us through it. I was transferred off the ship. I was transferred off the ship 6 months early. I was supposed to serve there 18 months, but because of the pregnancy, I ended up getting transferred after 12 months, and I got moved up here to Maryland. We weren't married. We weren't engaged. He was in school down in Virginia. I didn't know what was going to happen. I just knew that I had to go where the Navy sent me, and now I was expecting a child. And so he went through to find out that the company that he was working for at the time had an office up here in Maryland, not far from where I was going to be stationed. And even though we had not made like a marriage commitment to each other, he took the steps to put his house on the market, to transfer his job, and to go into a part-time student status. He was going to live with his brother and his wife at the time on weekdays and then come up the rest of the week here. So we started moving forward with this thought that we weren't going to get married right away. We weren't going to get married just because I was pregnant, because we didn't think that was the smart thing to do. And it was a hard pill to swallow for me, because it was, of course, against everything that I was raised to understand of, what is right and what is wrong. But there was really nothing we could do at that time. And also, my husband was coming from a family history of divorce. His parents were pregnant out of wedlock and got married, but were divorced by the time that he was 2. And so he didn't want to have that same history repeat for us, which I understood and respected. And so we just kind of went on as it was. So I was moved up to Maryland in June, late June, and was put in temporary housing, which is just a hotel on base. And I received a more permanent place in July. And it was July 13th, the day before my birthday. Vince came up to Maryland. He was bringing me some furniture for base housing from his house. And, we kind of were stuck in status quo. I think by that time, it was just a few weeks after his divorce was finalized. Once that ink was on the paper, we were kind of in the clear, so to speak. So it was the day before my birthday, and he had just driven all night to bring some stuff up to base housing. So all we had in there was like an air mattress and my clothes, no furniture. And so we were just kind of laying on the air mattress, and that's when he presented me with the ring. And it wasn't anything incredibly special or scripted, but he just said, I know this is what I want. I know that it doesn't make sense, and I know that we've got a lot of things stacked against us, but you and me is what I want, and, will you marry me? And so, of course, I said yes, because I knew this was the man that I was going to spend the rest of my life with. Having a child with him was just confirmation of that. And so that was July 13th. My birthday is July 14th. So we went up to New York that night because we were going to a wedding that weekend for a friend of mine. And we were able to announce the engagement, which was awesome. And then by September, we were married. So we had a very quick engagement. It kind of went super, super fast. And then, of course, my son was born in November. So he's already done the math. He knows that something is not adding up there. But we haven't really discussed it with all the children because the rest of them are kind of young. So this past year was 14 years married, 15 years since the day we met. And I look at us now compared to who we were 15 years ago, and thank God we are not the same people, but he has blessed us in spite of the choices that we made, and he has grown us together in ways I never would have imagined. It just, I would not have seen 15 years ago that this is where we would be today. And I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for all the twists and turns through the path that he's taken us, because he's faithful. He's faithful when we're stupid, is the reality of it. So that's the story of us. That's thank you, Terry. That's how we met. And so it's funny because, we didn't come from a fairy tale past. I have 7 children. I have 6 living children. We didn't come from a fairy tale past. And so now that we have a teenager and soon to be more teenagers, it really makes us stop and think about the choices that we've made in the past and how we've seen God work through our mistakes. Kind of colors how we parent, because we want to give our children the opportunity to make mistakes, but know that God is still solid and he's not going to abandon them even when they do something stupid, because he didn't do it to us. I mean, certainly, choosing what we did was not a promise that we would receive blessing. It certainly wasn't. We are thankful that he blessed us in spite of all the things that we did wrong. But I wouldn't change a thing, because we learned so much through the bad. We learned how to we learned conflict resolution from the very, very beginning. He does not have any children from his first marriage. They were only married for 4 years. So we have eclipsed that threefold. I when they signed the papers, it was parting of ways and never to meet again, which is very good. And I know that not everyone has that. Thank you. Not everyone has that when you deal with divorce. We were very lucky in that sense. Oh, that's, yeah, that's always the tricky thing. It's like bittersweet because, of course, life is always something to be celebrated. But I won't lie. Sometimes, that promise of new life is nerve-wracking. And so that's why I'm very hesitant to say one way or the other what people should choose, because I realize that when you're in that moment, when you're looking and waiting for that test strip to change, there's a lot that flashes through your mind. So one answer is not right for everybody. The adoption process, congratulations, Kelly. That is awesome. Yeah, we had a pregnancy scare the month before we found out we were expecting our son. So I think, God kind of softened the blow a little bit, that it wasn't unfortunately the first time we had, gotten that scare. So that's our story. That's our proposal. You're welcome, Heather. So that's it. I'm going to get back to packing because there's a mess around me. I did get a lot done yesterday, but yeah, so it's kind of neat. Another chapter in our love story. And maybe someday I'll finish the scrapbook because it's got lots of good starts. It's just not enough time to finish it up. So I will share one picture which is funny for me. So those of you that know, I am Italian American from New York, and he knew, or that I trusted, that we would be together for a while when the first meal that I made for him was meatballs and gravy or sauce, tomato sauce. Because that's like, you don't just make meatballs for anybody. So that was kind of one of the ways that I showed that I was serious about him and that I trusted that he was going to be with me. So yeah, there's the ship that I was stationed on. Wow, dated and then broke up for 7 and then married for 13. Wow, that is awesome. Yeah, we've just been together. There's like all our movie stubs and concert stubs from when we were dating. That was the weekend that we were married. We were married up in New York in 2001. So that was the last shot, the last picture of the towers that I have. And then our weekend away at a bed and breakfast shortly after we were married. And there's my oldest in the belly. So lots of good little goodies in there. That was from our Charlottesville trip, touring Monticello, and we went wine tasting. Yeah, there's a few of our wedding pictures that have the tower in them because we had taken pictures at this place on Staten Island. This is on the old Army base, and it overlooks Brooklyn and Manhattan. So a lot of our pictures, you can see the towers over here. His family, okay, so actually we were just talking about that last night. At the time, he was estranged from his father, his biological father. And so we were really just talking with his mom and his stepdad. And I remember his mom coming to visit us in Virginia. And at the time, of course, Vince was very sure that we were not going to move forward with marriage unless we were absolutely certain, because he did not want another divorce. He didn't want a repeat of what his parents had. And so he was really hesitant. And I remember his mom coming to visit us and her looking at us and saying, don't use our past to determine your future. If you know that this is right and this is what you both want, don't wait for everyone else's approval. Step forward in faith and trust that you're making the right decision. And it was one of those things that released us to understand that other people's choices didn't determine what was going to happen to us, that we were going to steer we were steering our own ship, like that we didn't have to necessarily follow the same cycles. And so I love her and respect her for giving us that freedom. And it's funny, speaking of powerful words, so I am from a very old-fashioned family, Italian and Irish, very Italian, very Irish. And I remember on our wedding day, because I was the oldest grandchild. I'm the oldest of my parents' children and the oldest of all my cousins as well. And I remember that day that we were getting married, when I showed up to the place where we were having our ceremony, my mom's dad, my grandfather, came into the bridal suite to talk to me. And I was like, oh boy. And, he looked at me, and I knew, that it was hard for my parents and I to tell all of my grandparents, because they were all living at the time, to tell them that I was expecting and that we weren't married and we weren't really planning to be married. And I remember my grandfather coming into my bridal suite and telling me, you don't have to choose this. You will have a baby. You can get married. You don't have to. And he said, it doesn't matter that everybody's waiting outside. It doesn't matter what everyone's expectations are. If this is not right, do not do it. And so it gave me that moment to say, I'm not just, it's not just the wedding dress. It's not just the fact that there's a baby coming. This is the choice that I want. I am ready to be a wife. I'm ready to be his wife. And, we're in it for good or bad. The trials have already come, and we're going to keep on, going through them together. And so we have lots of legacy moments where those older than us that have, walked down a rocky path before us have reached back to say, you can choose differently. Just because the expectation is there of a certain thing doesn't mean that that's your choice. And so all those things have built into us and really empowered us as a married couple and as parents. So we carry a lot of that forward, and it's, lots of good reminders for us to pass to our children too, because we, fall into this comfortable pattern where we may forget some of those things and we get caught up in the day-to-day. So it's good to talk out loud these things so that I can remind myself, so that it's helpful for the future. So there you go. There's more of our story. And thank you so much for listening, and thank you for all the love. I will probably chat with you guys later. I know tonight I'll be on around 10 or 10:30 for mail art.